Alright, today we are going to focus on group communication. We already started talking about this a little bit when we were focusing on the interpersonal communication. You'll remember interpersonal is between at least two people, and really when we focused on it in class, we talked about it just between two different people. So today with group communication, we're going to broaden the scope just a little bit. And we'll put some numbers to that in a second of what we mean by a group. But that's where we are going to start today. So I want you to start by thinking about some different types of groups of people that communicate with each other across various platforms and in different ways. So I'll just throw a couple of them up here up on the screen. Of course, you've got your family, you've got your church, social groups. These can be your friends, just different types of groups that get together for social reasons. Clubs, this is more specifically talking about ones with more closed membership. We'll talk about those more in a minute. You've got your work groups. We're going to talk a lot more about communicating within a work setting, organizational communication in the next video, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that one. And then you've even got departments within the work group, or you can think of these as maybe your different classes that you're in. You know, you've got different groups of students in each class that you communicate with. Online communities, these are becoming much more popular, especially now that everything has moved online in the last couple weeks. You're really going to need to know how to communicate, how the differences are between the online communities and the in-person communities. And we'll talk about those a little bit more once we get to social media, mass media, those types of things. You got committees, people that come together to make decisions about specific things. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. And then, of course, your school groups. And so those are just some examples of different types of group. There are really two divisions of groups that I want us to focus on today. The first one are primary groups. These are groups that meet our basic human needs for love and affection. This is your family, this is your church group, maybe your peer group, your friends. These would be considered the primary groups that you communicate with. And then you've got your secondary groups. These are the ones that meet our needs, where the main goal is simply to complete a task, solve a problem. These are going to be the groups that we focus on most in this video. And those could be either formal groups where the membership is restricted, the structure is clearly outlined. We talked about that with clubs. Maybe some committees. Most committees, however, are going to be these advisory groups that are going to be formed just to complete short-term goals, and then they'll disband. We'll talk about that more in a second. Before we get to that, I just want to talk about the size of groups. So we talked about interpersonal communication. That's just two people. And then we've got small groups. Those are just going to be up to 8 people. So typically between 3 and 8 people are going to be considered a small group. And then large groups are, of course, going to be 9 or more people. And when you get that size group that all have to communicate with each other, typically those groups are going to break into smaller groups, these small groups of 3 to 8 people. And I'll show you why that is. If you look here, I've got the number of group members coupled with the number of possible interactions between each of the members. So you can see as they begin to increase, it becomes much more difficult to just focus on one other person and communicate. You'll see here that is becoming much more difficult to just have a one-on-one conversation with all those people. And once you get up to 8 people, there's over 1,000 different possible interactions that can be happening. So you can see that once you get to 9 or more, it's going to be very difficult to be able to have some sort of logical and easy to understand. As far as just some basic theories of communicating in groups, I just want to show you some of these before we get into the different steps of forming a group, especially these advisory groups that we're going to talk about for the remainder of the video. Just wanted to throw group socialization up here. This is how we meet our interpersonal needs within a group context. So, we talked about in interpersonal communication, all these needs that are met by the other person, how we meet those needs for another person. And group socialization is just how that happens in a group context. So we can meet different needs by communicating with different people in the groups, and how we can be that person to other people in the groups. We'll talk about roles of groups, of group members here in a minute, but that's just this idea of group socialization. You want to make sure you relate what you're trying to say to something someone else was saying. So if you're talking to a group, if somebody else has just finished speaking, you don't want to just jump in with something completely out of left field. You kind of want to tie it in. That goes back to, creating context. We talked about that in just the basic communication studies. This understood shared meaning is always going to be present in any type of communication. You want to use common words. You don't want to be speaking above the level of everyone else in your group. The main reason for communicating in groups is to have this mutual understanding, to accomplish tasks, to get things done. The easiest way to do that is by making everyone understand what you're saying. So speak clearly, use these common words, and you should be good to go. Problem solving is one of the biggest things that is sought to be accomplished in group communication. So you need to start by defining the problem. You need to be precise with this. You want everyone in the group to know what the problem is. Then you need to analyze the problem, figure out what the problem is, how you're going to go about solving it as a group. Then you will establish criteria for the solution. So you'll say, all right, here's what needs to be done in order to solve this problem. This might involve coming up with multiple solutions. You'll consider all of these possible solutions. Then you need to decide on one, and that will involve divvying out tasks, letting everyone know their role in the group to solve this problem. And then you just need to implement the solution. So now I want to look at a couple of steps for developing groups. You'll need to know these and what each step consists of. This is going to be your first test that is attached to this module. Quiz, rather. It's not really a test. It's just going to be a matching test, and I want you to know these different types of stages. So the first one is when new individual members come to know each other and the purpose of the group. So why they're there, who each person is, what sort of role they have. That's going to be called the forming stage. And for each of these, I'll have an example from a popular movie where you can see, all right, here's sort of what it looks like. So here's the clip for this first one.
Hey everybody, got some awesome news. We have a new crew member today, Denise.
Hi everyone.
So I thought it'd be fun if we all went around and said our name and a little something about ourselves. I'll start. My name is Rod, and I like to party. All right, Dave, you're up.
Hi, my name is Dave, and I like to party.
No, Dave, I just said that I party, so maybe do something different for me.
My name is Dave, and I am the stuntman.
You know what? Let's move on. Rico, you're up.
Hello, I'm Rico, and I like to party.
Yeah, Rico, what did I just say to Dave?
Who?
Dave.
I like to party. I'm Rod.
No, you're Kevin.
Right. Kevin. I party.
No, you don't. Okay, nobody parties but me.
Yes, and we party.
No.
Yeah, just Rod.
Yes.
And me.
No, I'm the only one who parties.
I'm pretty sure I've partied before.
No, Kevin, I know for a fact you don't party, okay? You do not party.
You're right. Dave's the party guy.
Sweet.
Oh my God, shut up, okay? I'm just gonna do it for you. Denise, this is the crew. Dave's the mechanic, Rico makes the ramps, and Kevin is team manager / videographer. None of them party, right? Got it? Okay. Let's party.
All right, then we've got the storming stage. That is when group members will become more comfortable with each other. Conflict may start to arise. Status, rank, roles are being established. Some people think they ought to be doing something that someone else is doing, etc. That's the storming stage. So here's an example of that.
Strangers from distant lands, friends of old, you've been summoned here to answer the threat of Mordor. Middle-earth stands upon the brink of destruction. None can escape it. You will unite or you will fall. Each race is bound to this fate, this one doom. Bring forth the ring, Frodo.
Dream. I saw the eastern sky grow dark, but in the west a pale light lingered. A voice was crying, "Your doom is near at hand. Isudur's bane is found." Isudur's bane. What of it? Never before has any voice uttered the words of that tongue here in Imladris.
Do not ask your pardon, Master Elrond. For the black speech of Mordor may yet be heard in every corner of the West. The ring is altogether evil.
It is a gift to the foes of Mordor. Why not use this ring? Long has my father, the steward of Gondor, kept the forces of Mordor at bay. By the blood of our people are your lands kept safe. Give Gondor the weapon of the enemy. Let us use it against him.
You cannot wield it. None of us can. The One Ring answers to Sauron alone. It has no other master.
And what would a ranger know of this matter?
This is no mere ranger. He is Aragorn, son of Arathorn. You owe him your allegiance.
Then you've got your norming stage. You'll notice that these are all rhyming, so it makes it easy to remember, but maybe a little more difficult in the matching section of the quiz. The norming stage is when these rules, whether spoken or unspoken, become established and the group begins to communicate toward working toward the goal. So they've sort of worked out all the kinks as far as their differences, and now they're coming together to accomplish this one common goal. So here's an example of that.
Let's go!
What was that, Ray? Whatever it is, it ain't blocking.
Give me a break.
You want a break? I'll give you a break. Me and Julius.
Wait a minute. Just let them in.
Get to Rev once, just one time. I swear to God, I'm gonna hit you so hard by the time you come to. Ooh, boy, you're gonna need a new haircut. You understand me? Let's play, fellas.
On the ball. Let's run it again.
Let's go.
All right.
Master.
On me.
You all right, Big Petey? You all right? You really stuck him, Campbell. Yeah, I love me a little contact, Petey. This is left side. Strong side. Left side. Strong side. Left side. Strong side. Left
Then your performing stage, that one's pretty straightforward. The group will start to perform, accomplish their goal, and all of the implements and the solutions that they have come up with will be put into effect. So here's where we see that.
What just happened? Please tell me nobody kissed me.
We won.
All right, hey. All right, good job, guys. Let's just not come in tomorrow. Let's just take a day. You ever tried shawarma? There's a shawarma joint about 2 blocks from here. I don't know what it is, but I want to try it.
We're not finished yet.
And then shawarma after.
And then once the job is completed, typically if it's this type of advisory group, maybe a committee that was brought together for a very specific purpose, when the goal is met, they will adjourn in this adjourning stage and go their separate ways.
Dear Mr. Vernon, we accept the fact that we had to sacrifice a whole Saturday in detention for whatever it was we did wrong. But we think you're crazy to make us write an essay telling you who we think we are. And you see us as you want to see us. In the simplest terms, with the most convenient definitions. But what we found out is that each one of us is a brain, and an athlete,
and a basket case, a princess,
and a criminal. Does that answer your question? Sincerely yours, The Breakfast Club.
Don't you forget about me.
So those are the stages of developing groups. I also just wanted to mention the life cycles of groups, and I will focus just on one specific member for this type of life cycle. So the first one you've got is the potential member. This is when you are somewhat familiar with the context of the group, the problem that they are trying to solve, but you are not yet a member of the group. So maybe you are seeking to become a member, maybe they are looking for someone with your qualifications, but you haven't actually become a member until your curiosity or their need is met by asking you to join the group. And then at that point, you are considered a new group member. As you become more familiar with the other group members, as you move through the storming and the norming phases of the group, you will gain more acceptance, especially if it's a group that was already established before you joined it. And as you learn more of the group's rules, your roles in the group will increase. And before long, you will become a full member of the group. You will have all the privileges of knowing the rules, the customs, and if you've been there long enough, if you've shown your worth, you will even be able to create new rules. You'll be able to decide which roles people get, and those types of things. So that's if all goes well. If you start to feel, like you're being pushed to the margins, maybe you're not being used to the most, to the top of your ability, whatever that might be, you will become a divergent group member. Well, you will sort of back away from the group. Maybe this is because of differing opinions, or because you sense other people are more similar to each other than you are to them, so you sort of back away a little bit and become a divergent group member. Once you feel like you're no longer needed in a group, even if the problem has not been solved yet, or if you start to look outside the group to meet your needs, you are considered a marginal group member. So this is divergent group members. You're still a part of the group, but you're not being utilized as much. A marginal group member, you are actually actively seeking people outside of the group to help you. And if you do that before too long, you will eventually either be removed or remove yourself from the group and become an ex-member of the group. So let's talk about the longevity of groups. How long do groups last? How long will the problem solving going on? If it's not an advisory type of group, how long should those groups last? And really it just boils down to people feeling like they belong in a group. If they feel like their interpersonal needs are being met, if they feel like they're being productive in their role in the group, then typically they will stick to the group. They will stay this full member rather than becoming marginal or divergent. And the concept that everyone benefits from being part of a group and that the group produces better outcomes as a whole rather than just individual members is called group synergy. So you'll want to know that this synergy that we talk about is when everyone is working together to communicate and accomplish the tasks. I also mentioned here interdependence. This is another term that the book uses to describe the longevity of groups. This is the feeling that a group member is contributing and making a difference. So there's two factors really that go into you sticking it out in a group. The first one we talked about is if your interpersonal needs are being met. And the second one is this interdependence feeling where you are meeting the interpersonal needs of other people. If both of those are working, then typically you're going to try to stay with that group as long as possible. And also just support from the group reinforces commitment. So this is if you feel like your needs are being met and other people are supporting you in that, saying, yes, we're meeting your needs and you're meeting our needs. That's going to make this synergy so much stronger. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the roles of group members. This is just different types of roles that each individual person can have in the group. There are positive and negative roles that we'll talk about. We'll start with the positive roles, and we'll look at a couple of different ones for each of these. The first one, you've got your initiator coordinator. This is the person who suggests new ideas, new ways of looking at problems. You've got your elaborator. This is somebody who's going to take those ideas that the initiator coordinator suggests and will start to build on them, provide examples. It's really helpful if you have both of these people sort of at the helm. You also need a coordinator. This is somebody who's going to take some of the elaborator's ideas, some of the initiator coordinator's ideas, and they put them all together. So you'll notice that they're not an initiator, they're just a coordinator. So this could be someone who sort of sits in the back, is taking notes, is putting all of these suggestions together. Then you've got your evaluator critic. A lot of times people think of this as a negative role, but I would consider this a positive role. Every group needs someone to play devil's advocate, someone to evaluate all the ideas that are being presented, make sure that they are good ideas, make sure that they will work in the setting and the problems that you're trying to solve, and most importantly, provide this constructive type of criticism. And then you've got the recorder. This is going to be the secretary type role, someone who is recording all of the ideas, all of the examples, the suggestions, critiques, etc. And then several times groups will have these negative members. At the outset, they may seem like they fit into one of the positive roles that we've talked about, but as time goes on, as problems start to arise rather than get solved, you'll notice that group members are maybe falling into one of these negative roles. The first one is the dominator. This person just takes over the discussion. They don't ever allow others to take their turn. Similar to that, you've got the recognition seeker. This is someone who relates discussion to their accomplishments. We talked about, how you want to, in a group setting, and really in any communication setting, make sure that you're relating what you say to what somebody else has just said. The recognition seeker does not do that. They just say whatever they're feeling. Anytime somebody else brings up a separate topic, they just simply take it back and relate it to themselves. Then you've got the special interest pleader. This is somebody who is only focused on their personal agenda and they're not really concerned with solving the problem at hand. The blocker is sort of the negative side of the evaluator critic. They block attempts at consistency. They don't really care about, bringing up this criticism to construct, to help the group, but rather just to block any type of consistency. And then you've got the joker, also known as the clown. They seek attention through humor. They're just trying to distract the group. And typically you'll notice that every group will have some type of leader. And so let's talk about a couple different types of group leaders that you will notice. The first one is the appointed leader. There is really no voting, no discussion. There is just simply one person who is the leader. This may be because of their personality, their expertise, or because they are selected by a managing team, whatever, to be the leader of this type of advisory group. Then you've got elected leaders. These are the ones who won a majority of votes among the group. The emergent leader is sort of somewhere in between appointed and elective. Sometimes one type of leader will emerge when there are no leaders, no individuals that come forward. They will just sort of take control of the situation and become the leader. Another type of emergent leader will just come along and replace whoever has been appointed or elected because they're not doing their job. So those are the two different types of emergent leaders. And there also is a third type who just comes up because of some sort of crisis or challenge. Maybe the group is working fine, some sort of crisis comes up, the appointed or elected leader is not able to handle everything that's involved, and so another leader emerges to take care of the big crisis at hand. Let's talk about a couple other types of leaders. You've got your autocratic leader, who is more of the dominator. We talked about that. The democratic leader is one who coordinates and initiates a little bit of both. You can see that's more of the positive type. And then you've got the laissez-faire leader. This is one who really is just the leader. This might be just your coordinator, just your recorder. Typically, these don't make the best leaders, but I think every group does need somebody like this, but just not at the as the leader of the group. Your technician leader is chosen because of their technical knowledge. A lot of these are, due to technology or a specific expertise in their field. And then you've got your conductor leader, who, says that every group member must play their part, but they do so in a way where they don't really let each group member pick what they're doing or interpret what they mean by their part. It's a little bit toward the autocratic leader, but they do let other group members have input. It's just as long as it's along the same lines as what they are thinking. So those are different types of leaders. Really what you want to do as a leader of a group is to also be a coach. And I'll tell you what I mean by that here in a second. Coaches are, helping more than just leading. So you want to be able to orient and educate your group members if you're the leader. And this involves explaining goals, positions, skills. You need to nurture and encourage talents. You'll notice different strengths, different weaknesses of group members. You'll help them with that. You'll make corrections as needed, but again, you'll do this in a critical way that is also constructive. You always need to be listening to your group members. This doesn't mean that you're just the laissez-faire type where you're only listening. You take what you hear and offer helpful suggestions to those things. And then you, as the coach, as the leader, will confront problems that threaten the stability or survival of the team. All right, I want to close out this lesson on group communication by discussing groupthink. This is a term you may have heard before, and I'm not really sure if you've heard it in a positive or a negative light. There's mixed reviews on groupthink. The book really focuses on the negative aspects of it, and I think that's right. Groupthink is when group members become more concerned with the consensus, with the whole group agreeing on something rather than with critically assessing all options for solutions to the problems considered. So they're less concerned with solving the problem than they are with everybody agreeing. And you can see in that where the negative side comes out. There are several symptoms that you can notice of groupthink. The first one is overestimating the group, thinking that, okay, we've talked about this synergy, the group working together as a whole. And so if this group is all in consensus, then how can we not be coming up with the right answer. That's overestimating the group. The illusion of invulnerability just means that members believe they are special and they can't make a mistake. This is sort of the other end of the spectrum from overestimating the group. Overestimating the group means the group as a whole is infallible. And this one means I, as a group member, am special. I can't make a mistake, and so thus if the group is listening to me, then we'll be fine. Both of those, you can see, if taken to the extreme, are negative. Then you've got the unquestioned belief in morality. This is just describing how members believe that every decision they make is going to be good and moral. Member individually think this. They think their solution to a problem is good, is moral, and that's why they believe they are invulnerable in this illusion. Closed-mindedness is another symptom of groupthink, and most of what happens in this closed-mindedness is out-group stereotypes, meaning that people who are not in the group are often characterized in negative ways. So you view yourself, you overestimate yourself, you think of your group as coming up with the correct answers, while the out-group, the people who are not members of your group, are incorrect in their assumptions. You also get to collective rationalization, which means that members just start to ignore information coming from outside of the group that is contrary to the beliefs of the groups. And this can be really dangerous, especially if you get into this closed-minded type of thinking. Another one is the pressures of uniformity, meaning that every group member feels pressured to agree with everybody else in the group. Self-censorship can arrive, meaning that members have dissenting ideas but will not express them because they fear that if they say something that is not in agreement with the rest of the group, they might get kicked out or just be dismissed. Members who actively work to keep contrary information from the rest of the group are called mind guards. And these are people who don't want anything to be said that is against their beliefs. Obviously, that is going to be dangerous in a group setting. And the illusion of unanimity is essentially just where the leaders of the group will ask a question, does anyone disagree with this? And people who don't answer, silence is going to be interpreted as agreement, which is not always the case. And you'll see in all of these that there is often a pressure applied to the people who do not agree with them, whether that be some sort of nonverbal or verbal feedback that is negative towards them. And so that sort of dissuades them from speaking up and stating their opinion. So that's all I've got for group communication. I would recommend you reading this section of your book that's listed under Reading in Canvas, and then taking a look at the developing group stages again, because that's going to be the majority of your quiz for this module. I would also recommend you reviewing the 4 models of communication that we talked about earlier in the semester. You've had a quiz on those already, you've had them on your midterm, so you should be fairly familiar with them. But those may also pop up on your quiz. All right, that's all I've got for you today, so let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you all again in the next section under this module, which is going to be organizational communication.